right, guys, we're back. I have most of the crew. I know last week, all of us took vacation except Chris and Guru, so we appreciate you guys coming on and doing the post show. But I heard a lot of people on Twitter saying that we didn't eat enough crow because we had really talked about Chambers heavy over Gibbons in that 4A game. So we brought Alex on to let him talk about Gibbons from the Eastern perspective. You see that big smile. And as soon as we get back on the other side, we'll kick off the show. Okay, Mr. Bass, you have your moment in the sun, one shot. Tell us about Cardinal Gibbons and why we were wrong.
And Nick Drew.
I think we want to acknowledge that ultimately, as is the case with all, I won't say all, but most of the time, it's important in all of education-based athletics that we keep the focus on what someone does as opposed to what someone didn't do. It is wrong. It is grossly wrong for people to look at the outcome of this year's 4A football state championship within the perspective of the question, did Chambers choke? Absolutely not. Why do we hearken to speak about young people in that light when we have opportunities to contemplate the wonderful things that young people did in making an outcome to a game? And that's for this game and so many other games in so many other sports. Cardinal Gibbons seized an opportunity and made plays when it had to make plays. The two touchdowns were almost carbon copies of each other. So Gibbons obviously saw something in the Chambers defense and went with it. That's what you're supposed to do. Gibbons's defense under the coordination of Nick Drew has been impressive all year long. This was not an aberration. So it's a matter of what Cardinal Gibbons did. It's not a fluke when you're talking about a defense and defensive coordinator Nick Drew, who's distinguished himself clearly as the state's top defensive coordinator by having a unit that stopped all three Mr. Football finalists this year, Byron Brown, Jalen Smothers, the winner, Omarion Hampton.
Okay,
So,
I have a question.
Gibbons did.
One question. Did the elements play a factor in that game? Because Chambers is built on speed. A wet field slows them down considerably. Did that play a factor? Chris, you had the game. Any thoughts there? I know, Grice, you watched it.
I don't think so, because the first touchdown was scored well before the rains hit. I mean, it was obvious to me in the first couple minutes of the game that Cardinal Gibbons showed up to play. Now, over the course of the game, did it have an effect? I believe absolutely. It did have play part into the game's outcome, but did it determine the outcome? I don't think so, because, again, before the rains even came, Cardinal Gibbons showed up, I would say, as soon as they got off the bus, but heck, they walked to the stadium. They showed up ready to play.
Yeah. Grace.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely played an impact. I mean, we all know Jalen Smothers is, one of the best one-cut running backs, that we have in this state, and much different as far as the run game with that zone run where you're, kind of stick your foot in the ground and go. Whereas Gibbons really did a great job, and it was in their repertoire of just really playing tight phone booth football, able to run their counters and and ISOs and things like that, to where it's more downhill running. If anything, the style of the fight, we always talk about stuff like that. The style of the fight can hurt a team more so than anything else. And I think the elements really hurt Hollywood's effectiveness. We saw early, even after it rained quite a bit, he had that big run and was able to be effective there. And Gibbons looked a step slow, but as the conditions deteriorated, it was very clear that he wasn't going to be the guy that we'd seen all year.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Gibbons. I mean, you have to, and Hollywood said after the game, you got to play in the conditions. They had to play in the same conditions. So congratulations to Gibbons. They got a big win.
It rained on both teams.
Rained on both teams. First state championship for a Raleigh team in how long, Alex?
since 1970. Broughton
1970, yeah. So a long time. Congratulations to them. And the beautiful thing is we got a rematch of these teams again in August. I mean, that's going to be phenomenal. Maybe we'll even get Alex to come to the great state of Mecklenburg County. That's what y'all call it.
Look forward to it.
Well, one of the big things that happened after the state championships, and shout out to the other state champions. I mean, I don't want to ignore them. Shout out to Tarboro and Shelby and Dudley. And Chris, you feel like Dudley, before I jump to my next subject, Chris, you feel like Dudley might be the best overall team in North Carolina.
Oh, man, there ain't no question about it. I think Coach Stephen Davis and that entire team, they came out. They showed something to me. They've been showing it to me all year. I mean, you want to talk about an incredible defense. I think they gave up less than 6 points a game. That Dudley team, yes, I know they gave up 40 to Rose in a game, but I think that Dudley was just kind of pacing themselves and kind of keeping the distance they wanted in that rearview mirror in that game on Friday night. But that Dudley team, the line, the defensive line for sure, all 11 on that defense, I think that they were good enough to play with any team in North Carolina, regardless of 4A, 2A, 3A, 1A. It didn't matter. I think Dudley could have very much held their own. I'm not saying they'd have won, but I'm not so sure they wouldn't have either.
Yeah. And Gary, before we move on, just were you surprised in the 4A result with Gibbons and Chambers?
Yeah, I was surprised. I think it helps Gibbons that they had seen Vance before, and they had some success, especially in the second half against Chambers. Mm-hmm. In the first game. Yeah. And I think they took what they learned from the first game back in August and applied it to the state championship game. But it basically came down to they threw 2 deep balls and the corner was there for Chambers. He just misjudged the ball and they made a play. And we're so used to Chambers as being the team that makes the play. Mm-hmm. Over the last 3 years, they've made the play when it had to be made. Right. And we're so used to that it shocks everybody when they don't make the play. They didn't play a bad game. It's just Cardinal Gibbons made 2 plays that determined the outcome of the game.
Yeah, and again, shout out to Cardinal Gibbons. But one of the big things that came after the game, Gary, I'm going to throw this to you and Alex, was Glenwood FEREBEE is leaving Chambers. He took them to 3 state championship games, won the first 2 state championships in school history, and poof, he was gone. I mean, were you shocked by that, Gary?
Yes and no. Yes, that it happened so suddenly. No, I kind of expected him to leave to go south, whether that be South Carolina or Georgia. I think with the success he's had over the last 3 years at Chambers, that he made himself a very marketable candidate to get a job, that pays a whole lot more money and has a whole lot more perks. Right. And you don't get those in North Carolina. You got to go south to get those.
Alex.
I think it's important for everyone to look at this through several lenses. Okay, first and foremost, education-based athletics, teaching and coaching is more transient than ever before. The rate of turnover, even in your revenue sports, football and basketball, is higher than ever before. That is what it is. Number 2, people in any and all likes of work look for opportunities to improve their own situations. That is what it is. If people in corporate America look for that, why will we expect any less? And why should any less be expected of those in education? That doesn't mean that you should jump every 2 days, but when opportunities present themselves, people should look for that and be open to the possibility of listening. Right. I think one thing we've gotten into the habit of believing is that people are tied to a certain job. It's our responsibility in all walks of life, and we're talking education-based athletics here, that when somebody is vested fully in what they do for however long they're there, in this case 3 years, that we're grateful for that. We acknowledge that level of investment, And because of that level of investment indicative of the way people do things, the way a given person does things, you know that other people notice those things. And when other people notice those things, people earn opportunities. And when an opportunity that's better for someone who has been fully vested and committed to what they were doing in a situation comes along and they get a chance to better themselves, you wish them well. You thank them for what they did for you, and you wish them well. I think it's unfortunate that we've gotten into a situation where any of those factors are in play, whereas we always want what's best for students, which we should, and that's most important. So too do educators as professionals deserve that opportunity to do what is best for them and their family.
And I don't disagree with you, Alex. I just think I remember a time when football coaches stayed a long time. I thought it was cool that you could graduate and come back and your football coach is still there. You know, your basketball coach is still there. Now, you know, the turnover is so great. I used to know every football and basketball coach in the Charlotte region almost by name and by face. And I definitely don't know that now. But I think North Carolina really needs to take a look at its policies surrounding football coaches and basketball coaches, because we are losing our best to South Carolina, and they do matter in the school building. They do matter in how well the school is run. And I think that's something, and we'll get into it later on, but I think that's definitely something that needs to be addressed. It was a shock to me to see FEREBEE leave. Absolutely. All right. We've been teasing about this super team, Chris. And it's time to reveal the super team. We're not going to tell you who made what team and players of the year and coaches of the year. You have to read the paper on Wednesday morning. But Chris is going to go ahead and Grice can jump in and comment. But and I want you guys to talk about how hard it was to pick this team. But let's talk about the specialists first of all, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was very hard to pick this team. We've gotten together as a team. We've had a lot of text messages back and forth, looked at a lot of film. Grice and I have bounced a lot of kids back and forth, as has, Coach Griner, everybody on the team. I don't want to just single out anybody. I feel like it was a good collective effort. As always with any super team, especially one in a state like this where you have the far reaches from east to west, like Grice likes to say, from Dare to Cherokee, that's 500 miles apart. So there's going to be some teams that are some players that probably didn't make it that we think should have. But, ultimately, I think it just comes down to the fact that you've just got so many excellent football players in this state. And, it kind of comes down to splitting hairs or splitting atoms or something like that. But yeah, here we go. Let's talk about the Charlotte Preps North Carolina super team. We're going to start here with the specialist because, as I like to say, I was a special teams coordinator at one time. Look at the great Frank Beamer. You practice special teams first in practice. You cannot win a football game without a special teams. I don't care how good your offense or how good your defense is. If you can't kick that ball, return the ball, and more than anything, get a punt off, because I still think punting is the most important play of any football game. I know I'm old school, Grice. But hey, we're going to start with him.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, seeing some of these guys and having the ability to, watch them in action, and then even, for us having them for fresh faces or, some of these guys, Grice's gems. I mean, it's no surprise why they're here. I mean, you've got a lot of dynamic guys. And I mean, even from a specialist standpoint, the one thing that they do, they may not do it a lot, but it's so impactful in the football game. So, I mean, these guys definitely made an impact in every game that they're a part of.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can see it on the screen. We got two top-rated two top 10 punters in the country. Tyler Mason Wall is a super dangerous on the returns. We got two of the best long snappers in the country. Guru just raves about Nolan Hooser. Did I get his name right, Guru? It's Hooser?
Hoosier. Yeah, there you go.
Great.
He tied a 19-year-old record for most points in the season by a kicker with 130. Nobody wants to kick to Isaiah Bridges. He's averaging like 40 yards a kick. We had Benefield on talking on Grice's gems. And, Guru, Quayshawn Brown and Kevin Concepcion, they're just game changers, right?
Without a doubt. Again, a punt is the most important play of the game because no other play can you potentially flip field position for 40, 50 yards. But when you've got that, incredible punt returner. And back in the days when I was coaching punt returners, I said, don't try to bust a 50-yarder. Don't try to bust a 60-yarder. Just try to get me 10 yards. 10 yards is one first down that my offense doesn't have to get. But when you got a guy like Bridges who can average about 19 yards and has the potential to get 30, 40 yards, just think about it. And Grice, he's called plays. That's 4 first downs that offense doesn't have to move the chains. So that's just such an invaluable tool for a coach.
Oh, it is. And you got guys that can do it all over. And I mean, Guru, we saw, Keyshawn Brown, to get to that East Forsyth Huff game, he had to return the first play of the game. People always think that when you get your offense out on the field, it's the first play. No, he took the kickoff return all the way back in a game that, that was points rate or premium, and that was the difference. We look at Concepcion with the game against Huff, the big comeback, really sparked by his touchdown to kind of get them back going. So, I mean, you talk about those ATHs. I mean, those aren't just, got positions we just throw away to guys that we want to get there and don't have a place for. Those are guys that can do it all, and they do it in important moments.
Right, one of the things Chris just talked about is how the punting team is probably the most important special team. And if you look at it, if you want to put it in a basketball analogy, we talk about two-way players. Can you play offense? Can you play defense? Well, the punting team, you got to block first, then you got to run, then you got to tackle. So you're playing offense initially, and then you're turning to defense. That makes you a two-way player if you're on the punting team. So that's a big deal to be on the punt team.
Absolutely. And just to kind of go back to my special teams philosophy back in the day, a lot of teams just keep their offensive line out there on punt team. Not us. We're going to get the whole team off. Our punt team is going to be our first team defense. And those guys are going to have to block, but they're going to get after it like dogs.
Like dogs. All right. So let's move. Who's next? We got our quarterbacks and running backs. Let me find that. This is one of the glamour positions, I suppose. But here we go, Chris.
All right. Hey, there you go. Well, hey, there you go. There you see the quarterbacks right there. Byron Brown, Rollsville, 6'4", 195-pound senior. Already signed his letter of intent to go down to Tampa Bay to play South Florida. I think that's a steal, by the way, for South Florida and that coaching staff. Dalen Lee, man, he's a junior, by the way. We saw him just put on a show this year. Marion Hampton, hey, what can we say about him? I can't wait to watch him on the fields on Saturday. Kanye, wow, that's just all I'm going to say. Donovan Shepard, state championship game, sure. Single game rushing record, North Carolina, great. He's a man. He can run between the tackles and he can extend the play once he gets out into the secondary. He's big time. And of course, Hollywood. I mean, we couldn't have a team without Hollywood.
Yeah, Alex, we got your guy out here, Donovan Shepard. What are colleges missing out on this guy?
First and foremost, an honor roll student, high character young man, and someone who epitomizes using his individual attributes, characteristics, and qualities and channeling his achievements to take his team to a higher level. Everything that he did this year, you could talk about the 539 yards on 19 carries and the record-setting performance at Athens Drive. That was without a single play in the fourth quarter.
That's just crazy.
Because he did what his team needed.
Right.
So you have a sportsmanship perspective right there.
Yeah.
10 100-plus yard games. I mean, this kid was close to 200 yards at Richmond County. He was over 130, I think it was, versus Wake Forest. He was over 200 on the same field with Omari and Hampton.
No, he had a very, very impressive year. Gary,
Langston, this may be one of the first examples of the effect of transfer portal.
Yes.
Where college coaches are not taking a chance on a guy that may be borderline size-wise.
Right.
And they'd rather go get someone out of the portal than a high school kid.
Right. No, that's a good point. We got two juniors on the list of Dalen Lee and Dalen Smothers. Dalen Lee and Dalen Smothers are going to be, incredible. I wouldn't want to have to deal with those guys as seniors. I think you guys got it right for sure there. All right, now we got to talk about the guys that block for these guys. Let me find our lineman here, our offensive lineman. Chris was really animated. We were meeting about offensive linemen over at Boardwalk Billy. Shout out to Jay Edwards for feeding us last week. I think we got a pretty good group here, Chris.
Well, like I said, I mentioned how important special teams are. If I'm ever to get back in coaching, let's just say I'm ever to become a head coach in football, the number one coach that I'm going to hire is an offensive line coach, because you have got to move those bodies from point A to point B. You cannot win a football game without these offensive linemen. It's the most important position on the field, because it don't matter how good Hollywood is. It don't matter how good Amarion Hampton is. It don't matter how far Byron Brown can. He's going to be running all day if it wasn't for these Hawk Mollies up front. So, you got to love these big hosses up there. Sullivan Adshire, incredible football player down in Belmont at South Point High School. Carter Alls, I think, is probably the best offensive lineman in the greater Raleigh area over there at Heritage. Will Hart at Porter Ridge, we had him as a fresh face or a Grice's gym earlier in the year. Impressive performance there in that game against Grimsley a few weeks ago. Josiah Henderson up at Rollsville, he's been all over the recruiting pages. Tim Hogan at Leesville Road, incredible. Jamal Jarrett, Grimsley, obviously. Caden Lynch and Grice, he can talk about this guy up at Asheville. Josh Noble, he is just a man amongst the boys over there at Westro Wham. Saw him put on a show last week, broadcasting the Carolina Bowl. Sam Pendleton at Reagan, he is probably one of the top 2 or 3 best linemen in the state, as is Sam Witt at East Surrey. This is just a bona fide dude at offensive line. He could do some great things at the next level.
Grice, how good is Caden Lynch up at Asheville? You got a chance to see him face to face.
Oh, he's good. Unquestioned, leader of that unit. And, that was a group that I think, we were surprised when we got out there on the field. They did a great job continuing to, extend drives to help their running backs to get that extra 2 or 3 to kind of keep it going, and almost got us out of there. So, he was a big reason their rushing attack was so potent in that game, and you're no surprise he's there.
Yeah, absolutely. All these position groups are hard, but that was an especially tough one. Here are our receivers and tight ends. Chris, take it away.
Well, those offensive linemen, they help you secure wins and help you win championships. But these receivers, along with the quarterbacks, are the guys that really sell tickets and get fans excited about football, because as we've seen, these guys can really put points on the board. They're fast, they're athletic. Just the game of receiver, as well as the defenders, just how strong this level of the game has gotten in the past 15, 20 years is just unbelievable. A lot of schools who used to be run-heavy schools don't even run the ball because they can throw them to these guys, because kids just catch the ball so well. And while I'm not a fan of 7-on-7, I will credit 7-on-7s as a tool to make receivers better.
Hey, even Judas came around the end. Guru's not Judas, but if he can come around, I can bring anybody either.
We've heard about fake news. It's fake football. But anyway, hey, let's look at this list right here. Maiden High School, 6'2", 180-pound junior, by the way. Again, we want to always kind of highlight these juniors, and even a couple sophomores on this list. Chris Culliver, Maiden, big time. Wesley Grimes may have been one of the top 2 receivers in the state. Millbrook, I know, Alex, you've talked about him a lot this year, as has Noah Rogers, who's a junior, by the way, and he's just got ungodly SEC, ACC, Power 5 talent. Shalik Knotts heading to Maryland, incredible year. Jack Larson, he's a big old boy, a sophomore at Charlotte Catholic, more of a tight end, but incredible young man there. Mentioned Noah Rogers, Jamari Stallion. Talk about a performance he put on at the Carolina Bowl last weekend down there at Westover, playing for Coach Ernest King. Great year for him. I know a lot about Fayetteville football, always big time. They don't really see a lot of receivers come out of Fayetteville, but we did this year, maybe since delayed, Joe Horn at Douglasburg way back when. But, hey, this is a good list of receivers.
Man, and those underclassmen on here are special. Chris Culliver is probably one of the biggest secrets in North Carolina. This dude's an absolute stud. Larson accounted for 40% of Catholics passing. They threw to him almost every single time. And Noah Rogers, they talk about his hands, those Kawhi Leonard hands. He has incredible big hands. And didn't somebody tell you that he reminded you of a former Independence football player that became a pro, Chris?
Yeah. No, Hakeem Nicks, but only faster and bigger and better.
Sure. Faster, bigger, better, Hakeem Nicks. That is really scary. Hakeem Nicks, if you asked me to name like the 10 best receivers I've covered, he'd be in that list.
And don't forget, Hakeem Nicks didn't even really play much till his senior year and his junior year. Tommy Knotts
he was a tight end first.
Yeah.
He started out as a tight end and then moved outside.
Crazy. Let's talk about defensive backs, Chris.
Well, I mentioned the receivers getting good. Receivers are awesome, but you've got these guys right here that run stride for stride with them. They used to say DBs were the guys that were just as fast. They couldn't catch the ball. I don't know. I've seen a lot of these catch the ball. So you never know. We've got a couple here that are just phenomenal. Isaiah Brown, Murray, Huff, just incredible athlete. I almost felt like we could put the entire Huff secondary on there. It was so good this year. That Huff team, amazing. Isaiah Crowell, East Forsyth, Stephen Davis II at Dudley, Tavion Durisma Chase. I think, what is he, the leading receiver or interception guy in the state? They got him at defensive back up there at Northeastern for Coach Antonio Moore. I think that we could have put about 7 guys from Northeastern on this team. They were just that dynamic. Stefan Jenkins up there, Wilson Hunt, Jackson King, Hodgard, incredible young man. And right here in the Queen City, Chris Peel at Providence Day, and he's a junior as well.
Yeah, he's going to be special. The Providence Day is going to have a really good team. They just got the number 1 player in the country to transfer it back, quarterback Jaden Davis coming back. They're going to be a pretty special team. They got Steve Shipp's son. Steve Shipp was National Player of the Year in 1996 at West Charlotte, wide receiver. His son Jordan caught the game-winning catch in the state championship game. They may have as many Power 5 talents as anybody in the Charlotte region. They are going to be really, really good. And, we don't like to, I think there's only been one private school that ever started out number 1 in preseason Sweet 16, but they could darn sure make a run at it. All right, defensive lineman.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but, defense wins championship. I know Grice here, he's an offensive mastermind, but I still like hanging my hat on a good, solid defense to win a championship. We've seen it this year. Hey, Alex talked about get on D all year. Nick Drew certainly showed it. Greensboro Dudley, they had one of the best defenses. Tarboro, defense is what wins championships because you never know when you're going to get in a state championship game and the heavens open up and it storms sideways. You got to have that defense. But anyway, look at right here. Bo Atkinson, incredible this year. Just an unbelievable football player. By the way, Bo Atkins is at Leesville Road. I think we got that wrong here on the graphic. Deshaun Davis at Huff, incredible young man. Eli Crest, Jabron Harvey, unbelievable young man, junior. I think this man has NFL talent. Santana Hopper, Shelby, unbelievable. Anthony A.J. Mebane, Southern Durham. Again, those 2 bookends at Southern Durham, incredible young football players, both of them juniors. Both of them will be playing football for a long, long, long time. James Pierce, what can we talk about him? He's got an opportunity. I think he's got that Julius Peppers kind of just generational talent. We talked about Travis Shaw being a generational talent. I think James Pierce is as well. And Jaheim Pittman at Dudley. Again, you want to talk about a man who single-handedly just wrecked offensive lines. This guy did it.
Dudley had all those guys averaging, they had more than 15 sacks in the season. It was their defense was just scary. To your point about them, potentially being the best defense out there, they were they were just incredible. All right, linebackers.
Well, I look at this list right here, and you just got a bunch of dogs. You got that right. Mac David, he's one of them, certainly West Forsyth. He was on our preseason football list. Paul Edens is an old school football player. I think this man had about 210 tackles on the season, also played on offense. This guy never exited the field. They won 15, 14 games. there's a reason for it. Paul Edens had a phenomenal year, so close to getting to the state championship game. Malachi Hamrick, you want to talk about one of the best, maybe the best linebacker in the state. I'm not sure. That guy, he's another one of these guys that I think is going to get the job done on Saturdays. Obviously committed up here to play for Mac Brown at UNC. Albert Red, one of the most freakishly talented linebackers I've seen in the state. This is a young man that could probably play any position on offense, on defense. He is just that dynamic football player. Jalen Walker, he was a runner-up last year for our Mr. Football Award. Saw him last week at the Carolina Bowl, just put on an absolute show. Heading over here to Georgia. Can't wait to watch him on TV. And then Torn Wright, A.L. Brown, steadily. I know A.L. Brown didn't have an A.L. Brown-like season going 5-5, but this young man played pretty hard every day. And it wasn't the offense that kept them. They were in some close games all year, and I think he was a huge, huge part of it.
Yeah, Malachi Hamburg was named Max Prep's North Carolina Player of the Year. Pretty impressive for a defensive player to win Player of the Year. Jalen Walker was actually Gatorade Player of the Year in the spring. Torrin Wright, Mike Newsom, who's coached some really good linebackers, some NFL linebackers, felt like he was one of the best he's ever coached. So shout out to Torrin for a phenomenal season and earning that type of respect from your coach. Gary, having seen the super team for the first time, any thoughts?
No qualms. I mean, it's a tough job, and somebody's going to be disappointed, but those guys have numbers to back numbers and success of their teams. I think is the best way to look at it. Some guys may have numbers, but their teams weren't successful, or vice versa. Their teams are very successful and they're very talented, but they didn't have the numbers. So I think you guys got it right.
Yeah, and I think, there's also some guys that are considered to be one position that they're going to be in college and being recruited that position, and may even be a top tier recruited that position, but they didn't necessarily play it in high school. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, you'll see an all-star team. Where's this guy? He's going to Michigan, but he's going to Michigan as a linebacker, and he played running back in high school. So right. I think, that kind of stuff is there as well. But yeah, it was a fun season, guys, of high school football. Enjoyed it. We're definitely going to come back again, and I guess in the fall to kick off a new season. Gary and Alex will be back with us when we kick off basketball. We come back after Christmas break. But before we leave, we had to do one final coach versus coach with Sam and Sam's not here. Alex and Grice and Chris. So I'm going to put you guys in the 3-shot and let you guys have a little quick battle before we got here.
All right, Alex. Well, here we are. I don't know if we've got the theme music queued up or not, but we're in here. I want you to give me your best Sam Griner impersonation today. So let's go ahead and lock the doors and let's get it on. Hold the phone. Alex already has his own graphic in here, man. He'll talk. And Alex, man, you're killing me with your backdrop today. I had named your iron Preston, and here we go. I can't even see your iron anymore.
Well, the iron is being used to iron on new patches for teams that won championships. Iron on patches for their new championship patches. So the iron is being used, but in the spirit of that, congratulations to all the teams who get to iron on patches to various jackets and other gears for jobs well done.
Well, those teams that ironed on the patches, they got on D like Alex has been telling them to do all year. Grice, you're the home team this year or this week, so I'm going to let you. You got the coin toss. What's it going to be?
Oh, we're taking it. We want the ball. We're receiving.
Yes.
Alex isn't ready. He's leaning forward trying to catch it. Like they always tell you that. So sit back, Alex. Sit back. Get ready. Get relaxed here. You look too tense.
Oh, but this is one of those
situations early in this game because this first question is going to Coach Grice. Question right here: Coach versus Coach, special edition of Alex versus Grice. Did the East make a statement in this year's state championship games? Coach Grice, this is for you.
No, they didn't make a statement. I mean, you had a game in an illustrious program like a Tarboro play at Mitchell, and they were able to be successful, which I think Guru and I talked about would be a 50-50 game. I think this, the game with Gibbons and Chambers, we saw in the first game. It was a one-touchdown game. We knew that the rain would help out Gibbons. They did a great job by getting the ball in the air early and taking their shot before it became tougher to throw the football. And I think they were able to lean on that. I mean, again, they played twice. 50-50. Gibbons just happened to win the one that mattered a little bit more than the week one game. I don't think they made any bigger statement because what they did actually, and they, along with Roseville, another team that was very close to making that championship game, they came and played more teams from the West to get them prepared. So for me, they actually were just more prepared than normal and understood they have to go out West to make sure that they can be ready to win a state title. So for me, it's no statement. They understood what they needed to do, directed their focus towards being state champs, and were able to execute.
Well, Coach Grice is absolutely right, but take what he said to realize that, yes, the East did make a statement. You can take all the reasons that he said And in doing those things, the East was able to make a statement of winning on the last day of the season. But I also want to say the question is worded very, very well. Did the East make a statement in this year's championships? Yes, the East did, by doing what Coach Grice said to set themselves up to make that statement. That being said, it was a statement in this year's championships. No one is going to try to discredit the tremendous history of the West, particularly Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, since 2000. So in this year's championships, yes, the East made a statement, and the East made a statement by doing what Coach Grice did, what Coach Grice said. So it all works together.
All right, man. We're going to stay with you on this one, sir. Alex Bass, question number 2. Should all the state championship games be played on the turf field? Obviously, we saw how the rain and slippery field affected that 4A game at Carter Finley.
I don't think it matters. It's one of those things where we want to do everything that we can to optimize the championship experience for students. Now, that being said, we all know that what happens from one year to the next in terms of, in this age of corporate sponsorships and generating new revenue streams and this, that, and the other, could create a situation where championship games from one year to the next are played on different venues. We get in situations from what we saw this year where we had 2 football seasons in one calendar year, which could have created some unique situations, particularly with the spring season, because we were coming up on college graduations. So you got too many things in play. So do we want to optimize the experience for our student athletes? Of course we do. And ideally, should that involve championships on turf fields? Of course. But if it cannot happen, that's not one of those things that's going to be a game breaker and end of the world deal.
Man, that's all nice and well and good. You have all these Charlotte schools pretty much that are playing on turf all year. Then you get to a place where they're calling for rain. You know the field can't hold up. Again, it wasn't a situation of the one game being played there. There were back-to-back games there in a situation where we knew that it was a chance for weather, and I think it greatly impacted both teams. It's just outside of who won, who can take that out of the equation. I wanted to see a better football game between 2 teams that could spin that ball. I wanted to see Anshawn Camp get the ball down to KC, get the ball to Armand Wright, Sean Walker. I wanted to see Connor Clark get the ball to Shotwell, be able to spread the ball, get Donovan Shepard out on the swing like Dalen Smothers would. I just thought it would have been a better football game, and I wanted, and both teams deserved that better football game in better conditions. You put that on turf, I think we're able to see a little bit more than what we did. So that was a little disappointing for me, but I get out of here with the grass, man. Hey, let's
Coach Grice, what is the playing surface in the Cardinal Given Stadium?
I don't know. It's probably turf, right?
I rest my case.
I'll say this, though. We do have one Charlottean right here in the Queen City who has a magnificent stadium, and I'm talking about one David Tepper. It would be just incredible to have all 4 of the state championship games played right here in Charlotte, right here in the middle of the state. That's just my 2 cents. I know that's not part of the coach versus coach question, but, hey, turf field, I'm going to throw it out there. Well, hey, finally, Coach Grice, should booster clubs be allowed to legally supplement head football coaches' salary, or assistants for that matter, but coaching salaries?
Yeah, I think it's something that should be done. I mean, I think we're in a situation where it's political as far as you talk about teaching salaries and some of the caps and limitations for certain states and for certain schools and what they're able to provide to coaches. So if you're in an area that really prioritizes, having a great staff and ensuring that they're able to receive the financial compensation necessary, sure, a booster club should be able to help and provide assistance in that area. So I definitely think it's something that should be looked into. I think if we're chasing the balance between, quality education and the success on the playing field that we optimize or that we look for, especially as Alex's utopian view of true education-based athletics, I think it's important that we provide the booster clubs there to provide that compensation to keep quality coaches in the area.
I think that the phrasing of this question should concern us all, and both Chris and Jonathan know what I mean by that. But still, I'll answer the question. This is a tough road to go down anywhere. If we want to do anything whatsoever to move closer to any type of competitive parity, not from one school system or LEA, local education agency, to another, but even within school systems and LEAs, then the legalization of this will further reinforce the chasm that already exists between haves and have-nots. We never will eradicate that chasm, but this is a vital means for doing what we can to manage it. And furthermore, as Coach Grice said, where do we get in terms of what we prioritize? Even if you want to avoid the argument of education or traditional classroom, because this is all education, but traditional classroom settings and sports settings, what do we do in terms of prioritizing one sport over another? You want to talk about fueling rifts internally within schools? I prioritize your sport, but I don't prioritize yours. And it's legal within my school? We will be proliferating the ruination of education-based athletics even more through the legalization of something which, as I've said, we're already concerned by the phrasing of this question. So that being said, no.
Let me just jump in there right quick, Alex, and I'm going to throw this in there. And obviously there's a huge there's a lot of complexity to this kind of a question. Of course, you've got to consider all the Title IX implications. You want to make sure that you know, female coaches and female teams and really everyone is somewhat inclusive. But I want to go back to my time of coaching in Texas. You know, I've talked to people who lead there and just understand that football drives the bus for these other programs, and allow your football team. Why, yes, I want all the coaches. I was a tennis coach. I got paid $600 to be a tennis coach. I want to see football drive the bus for all these other sports. I've seen in some of these larger districts in Texas where academics and football thrive off of the academics, and the other Olympic non-revenue sports predominantly thrive off of the revenues from football. So yes, unfortunately, you know, you might get a larger number of monies going to football, but use the monies that you make. I mean, look at it from a business entity, not just from a fairness entity, to use that money and stuff to throw into your academic funds, to throw into helping your girls volleyball team, to throw into helping your tennis team and all those other teams.
Gary, I'm just really curious to get your thoughts here.
The only issue, and Chris is right, the only issue is we know that some booster clubs, depending on the school, have access to more revenue and funds than other booster clubs. And that's where you get into the issue of it not being equitable across the school system. When you have a booster club at one school, it may have 1,000 members and they're all contributing something and volunteering, and then at another school you have a booster club that has 20 parents. That's where you're going to run into problems, where you're going to look at people saying it's not fair, and then kids enrolling in schools that have a more powerful booster club because they have access to better uniforms, to better pregame meals, to better transportation, to all the things that gets kids' attention, and therefore they want to go to that school.
Okay, so what's going on now?
I was just about to say.
I mean, all the stuff you said is going on
Hey,
now.
but the key word there is legally.
I mean, it's legal. It's implicit.
It's the gray area for sure. Yeah. No, it's a very interesting question. Very interesting question. Guys, it's been a great year. And I want to thank y'all because we've really been filming for almost a year and a half, 2 years straight with the pandemic. We filmed all the way through the pandemic back in 2020 and, most of 2021. So, I just want to thank you guys for doing it. I hope you guys, the viewers, have enjoyed it. The big stars are here tonight. but we're gonna give Gary the one shot and get Gary's final thoughts, and it better not be about no Cowboys.
We don't care.
Well, I'll stay away from professional football. First of all, I'm just happy we got the season in with minimal cancellations. Looked like the football season beat the Omicron virus, and hopefully the other sports seasons can make it through this pandemic. But I'm just happy that football season was able to make it through really 2 seasons during the heat of a pandemic. And I want to congratulate all the 4A teams, 3A, 2A, 1A, everybody that made it through the season. You're to be congratulated. So that's all I have.
Absolutely. And Gary wants to make sure that he can go to Chambers next year to watch games without any issues. So shout out to Chambers. Gary back on your side. All right, guys. Look, it's been a fun season. I'm Langston. That's Alex, the contrarian. That's Coach Grice, the coach. That's Gary, my main man. And that's the guru, Chris Hughes, the #1 voice of high school football. And we are talking preps. We'll be back in